Welcome to Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash as he takes a fresh look at today's most interesting health topics with functional medicine's leading doctors and experts. Learn how to feed your mind, exercise your body, and nurture your spirit in the way nature intended. Catch him live every other Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Over the next hour, we'll introduce you to some fascinating people and engaging discussions that may provide you with answers to assist in revolutionizing your own personal health. And now, here's Dr. Nelson.
Hi everyone, Dr. Nelson Bulmash, and I am here for another adventure with you. I am the host of Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash. It's such a pleasure to be with you. I think about how honored I am to do what I'm doing. I was asked more than 3 years ago to attend a show. I had helped somebody through a very, very severe stroke, a gentleman in his 70s who had been involved with directing and producing various media. He did media involving people who wanted to produce short movies and ways to promote through marketing and so on and so forth. And he had a very bad stroke. A little over 3-4 years ago. And he came to me and he said, Nelson, I know you can help me. I don't want to languish for the rest of my life. I don't want to be incapable of speaking. I don't want to be incapable of walking a straight line. Please help me get better. I just don't want to end my life this way. And I said, okay, do everything I tell you to do and we'll see how far we can take you. Well, after about a year of care with me, he was over 90% with his ability to function with regard to his right side. Walking again, talking again, no slurring. And he was able to reclaim his life. He then set me up with a person who owns the United Intentions Network. And he said, you got to interview my friend, Dr. Nelson. He did incredible things for me. He said, like what? He said, he's the one who's got me functioning after my stroke. He said, you're kidding me. I said, it's been remarkable how well you've improved after your stroke. He said, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to interview him. He said, really? You want me to interview him? I mean, isn't he just a doc that's like any other doc? And he said, no, he's not. Give him an opportunity to be on your show. I promise you won't regret it. And he said, okay, fine. I'll call him. So he had me on his show. And after the show, everybody in the studio came and they said, Nelson, have you ever thought about doing media? And I said, I have. I just don't want to go back to school and have to, go to broadcasting school. I don't want to start on the AM dial where probably not a lot of people listen these days and take 10 years or longer to go to the FM dial. And he said, okay, all right. Is that it? I said, yeah, pretty much. So two months later, he called me and he said, hey, Nelson. I said, Tim, how are you? He said, you remember me? I said, of course. What's going on? He said, I got good news for you. I said, what's that? He said, you're going to be the first person to ever go directly onto FM radio without any background in media. I said, oh, that sounds great. He said, yeah, when can you start? Now, mind you, I'd never done anything with media before, but I knew that I wanted my voice heard. And he said, how soon can you start? I said, I can start in 2 weeks. He said, great. So I showed up here at the studio. I'd never had anybody tutor me. I never had anybody say, here are some of the things you want to do. Here are some of the things you don't want to do. I sat down. And the reason I sat down to do this was because my desire to help my audience improve the quality of their lives was much greater than my fear of disappointing myself and failing in this journey. And so I want you to know something. When you listen to my show, when you support me by sharing my show, I'm here really for one reason. I don't get paid for this. When I was a little boy, I was 5 years old, I walked in and I saw my mother sitting. I was just standing in the kitchen, noshing on something, which I shouldn't have been. And I didn't want her to see me because I didn't want to get scolded. And she was just laughing so joyfully. And I just stared there at her. And I just thought, she's so happy as I looked at her. And then finally she said, sweetie, come in here. Sit with me. I said, what are you watching, Mom? She said, I'm watching a show called The Mike Douglas Show. I love it. I watch it. I prepare dinner early and I watch it before your dad gets home. It's my favorite part of the day other than to be with you guys for dinner. I said, that's wonderful. And I watched Mike Douglas. I'm dating myself in the 1960s. I watched him interview the Beatles and all kinds of other celebrities, that Elvis Presley and so on and so forth. And I thought, if I ever get the opportunity to interview amazing people, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to pick people who have a message that will change the listening and the behavior in the world. And that's why I do what I do. And today my guest is so perfect for that. She has such, I could do a whole show on on her bio. It's unbelievable. Her name is Kim Normand Dorbrand, and she is just unbelievable. I can't wait to really get this conversation going here. I want to read you just a few of the things, and there must be 30 points like this that I could read here. For example, winner of the most influential women in business and government welfare sector for 2009-2010, voted and chosen as top 4 in the Ernst & Young World Social Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2011. TEDx speaker, awarded and acknowledged by the state of California legislature for exceptional work done in uplifting children and youth in 2012. Winner of Exemplary Women Leadership Award 2013. Winner of Global CSR Excellence in Leadership Award 2014. We'll do one more. Once again, there are probably 30 of these. Selected to, am I pronouncing it right? Skull World Forum at Oxford 2014, 2015. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Your bio is so unbelievable for somebody who thought you were such an underachiever for so long, Kim. I had to sneak that in there because you remind me a lot of me. It says here that you are deeply passionate and committed to helping children through education, social emotional learning, and teaching for both adults and youth. You have a strong belief in accessing and developing potential. And yes, you are sought after speaker and workshop facilitator throughout the world. Kim, it is such a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for joining me on Health Matters.
Thank you, Nelson. I'm super excited to be with you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Oh, you're so very welcome. I'm sitting here reading your bio, and it's like it was stunning. So, Kim and I were speaking before the show, and she was being very candid with me and sharing with me that, for a lot of her life, or certainly part of her life, she didn't think she was the achiever that some of the other academics, if you will, in her family happened to be. And I felt the same way. I have, same thing. I come from a very richly littered family with you name it, doctors, lawyers, accountants, anything where it takes a great deal of education. And so I later became that. For a lot of my life, though, it seemed so daunting to become that. It was overwhelming. And, one of the things I love about you is your life is orchestrated to help the world live through more happiness and a greater ability to thrive because you give them skills to do so. And I'd love to talk to you about that today, Kim.
Yes, please do.
So, you do one thing that was fascinating to me because I haven't been able to find a lot of information on this. Everybody's familiar with IQ. And, back in the 60s and 70s, we thought IQ was it. Like if you didn't have a good IQ, or at least I did certainly, and many of the people I was surrounded with would say, he's got kind of an average IQ. That guy's never going anywhere. Well, some 10, 15, maybe even 20 years ago, we started talking about emotional quotient. Is that about right? Somewhere between 10, 15, 20 years ago? And so people began to realize that, yes, you could be really bright, but if you didn't have the emotional intelligence to wield your brilliance, that it was not necessarily likely that you'd be successful. And many of us know people who are extremely brilliant. I remember my first wife was telling me a story that she went to school with 2 math scholars who placed first and third in the national math competition. And 5 years after they graduated from high school, they were still flipping burgers at McDonald's. Not that many of us started that way. But if you're somebody who's winning national math competitions, you might think that you'd end up in a place where you're going to use more of that background than the amount of skill that it would take to flip a burger, so to speak. So because you're really brilliant doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Well, now, Kim, you're someone who not only talks about the other two, but you talk about something that is very fascinating to me and is very relevant during this time, and that is learnability quotient or learnability IQ.
Actually, the love quotient.
Oh, love quotient. I'm so sorry.
And however, what you're saying, though, the learning quotient is, if you think of it, it's the accumulation of all of that.
Yes.
And if you're looking at EQ and the love quotient and what we believe makes up a human being.
Right.
And you track back like to the yogic days and everything. The whole belief system is about going within. It's about really getting to know who you are.
Right.
So you have to go within in order to go without. And then somewhere along the way, we lost that. And it became more about training people up to fit into the workforce.
Right.
We wanted kids to be trained up so that we could fit them into jobs that suited society, not that suited their personality, their character, what they were passionate about, or any of that. It was that we were creating a machine that people needed to fit into.
Right.
And now what's happening is that that machine is breaking. And it's been happening, I've been observing for the last couple of years at least. And now everyone's going, okay, what is the new way? And that's why in COVID, so many people have struggled, because all of a sudden, what they were trained up to do, to get in the car, go to work, that structure that they were trained up in, all of a sudden doesn't work, and it doesn't deliver. And now they're floundering around and they're not quite sure how to make life work, because it's been flipped on its head. COVID gave us a whole new reality that we have to navigate. And if you look at the love quotient, it underlies everything. It's everything that we are, everything that we do. And if you don't have that intact with your emotional intelligence, then your learning is not going to happen.
Got it.
And we've noticed this. I worked with thousands of orphan and vulnerable children affected by HIV/AIDS in South Africa.
Yes.
And people would say, well, how do you choose them? Because we always had about 2,000 kids from K1 through to grade 12 into college and university as beneficiaries. And they would say, well, do you do IQ tests on them? And we go, no, because these kids are so at risk. Most of them live in child-headed households, which means that they're no adults. There's no role modeling.
Wow.
There's none of the stability that you would take for granted, right? No, when we say no food, absolutely no food. All of these challenges. We had kids eating grass out of the fields, because there was no food. And you don't know their learning ability because of where they come from. And when you give them the nurturing, and when you teach them the self-awareness, the self-consciousness, and you give them the psychosocial support, then it is proven now, when you give them that, the academics go up.
Fascinating. So, I'm going to laugh at something for a minute, and you can laugh with me if you want. I watched the movie Forrest Gump the other day, and I love that movie so much. A lot of people think it's just a silly comedy, but there's so many real life lessons. And of course, the central character, Forrest Gump, was said to be basically retarded. He had an IQ of 75, and he wasn't smart enough to be in public school. And what I love about that movie is there's so many, I was talking to a friend of mine about this today, there's so many incredible lessons. His mother loved him so hard that there was no way he could fail. And he ended up being incredibly, and you can say, Nelson, it was just a movie, but I'll give you another real world example here. There was a woman who was thought to be a disastrous student last century. I mean, her teachers just said she's just not bright. She's never going to amount to anything. We can't even get her to sit down and concentrate. She's just really a bad student, and she's not bright, and she's never going to go anywhere, and we should just let her go. Well, her parents made sure that didn't happen. It turned out that she was a dancer and was not interested whatsoever, Kim, in academics. She had no interest in math. She had no interest in English. She wanted to spend her life dancing. This woman ended up becoming a very famous dancer and ended up being the woman who directed Cats.
Right. Totally, I read that. And you can go into history. There are just so many examples.
Right.
Albert Einstein was told repeatedly that he would never amount to anything.
Right.
And if you go back, I once bought a book with famous people's report cards from school. I mean, all of these incredible people who changed the world were getting D's and C's, and they were like, the comments were like, he'll never amount to anything, better he go into a trade or whatever else. And these were the people, because generally people who are visionaries do not fit in a box.
Right.
I mean, I've had that challenge my entire life. My son has got that challenge. And yet, if you look how people succeed and where they succeed, that is something very different. That is not academics.
No.
And we can't look at that as a milestone for success anymore. Academia is the key that opens the job door.
Kim, I'm so sorry. I've got to interrupt you. We've got to pause for just a moment. We've got our first commercial break. Hey, folks, Dr. Nelson Bulmash here. I am the host of Health Matters. Thank you for joining us today for another edition. I will be right back after this commercial break.
Safety Air Purification Systems. An air purifier with robust technologies that can filter, sterilize, and re-energize large quantities of air at a whisper-quiet volume. It features a proprietary HEPA RX and pre-filter that act as a capturing layer, going for big particles and ultrafine particles. Its next layer is an activated carbon filter that absorbs and captures volatile organic compounds and noxious odors. From viruses to bacteria, its kill chamber packs a 3-punch layer to destroy over 99% of anything that remains in the air. And while most air purifiers stop at the capture or kill stage, Safety Air Purifier takes it one step further, re-energizing clean, pure, sterilized air by creating negative ions within the revitalizing chamber. The Safety Air Purifier also monitors air quality in real time, utilizing smart sensor technology that helps you breathe better air, increase productivity, and improve morale. But don't just take our word for it. Ask the thousands of workplaces we've helped, Fortune 500 companies, dental offices, senior facilities, K-12 schools and universities, and professional sports teams. The Safety Air Purifier's robust technology combined to protect you against indoor air pollutants and viruses to make the most powerful yet quietest air purifier. Safety Air Purification.
Right, we're back. Kim, my apologies for interrupting you. I love this notion so much. Forgive me for my mistake. The idea, though, that, it's funny because the common denominators, I'm that guy who's been sort of sappy my whole life, and I'm glad that I am that, because I'm somebody who loves very, very deeply. My mother told me that when I was a child. She said, "Honey, you're a very deeply loving, caring person, and got to figure out a way to make it so you're not too fragile, but that you keep that, because that's going to really help a lot of people one day with whatever you decide to do when you're a grown-up and you do what you love." And so I was very dyslexic. I didn't hear well. I didn't see well. So school for me was a nightmare. I was that person that got really, sometimes I was so discouraged, my grades were embarrassing. And particularly since my brother and sister got pretty much straight A's and were Ivy League students. So, my mom and dad said, "We love you, but son, you're going to have to prove yourself." So I didn't get the opportunity to go the Ivy League route. I did end up going to a very, very good school after going to a junior college, where I proved that I actually did have skills and could perform academically. But I love the idea, Kim, that ultimately the thing that unites us all is the spirit of love. And that if you love someone hard, you create an opportunity for them to show up and be successful and thrive in the world. I'd like you to talk about that more.
So the base of everything in the world that is positive comes from a love base. Everything.
Right.
And when we make decisions, especially, we make them either out of love or out of fear. When we make a decision or a choice out of love, it's the positive energy, and that is the right way to go. And when I say right, it's not a judgment. It's the way that is going to be most positive for us. When we make a fear choice, we're making it in a way because we are afraid of the outcome,
right? Not
because we want to do it, but because we are so afraid that if we don't, what if is going to happen?
Right.
So we are out of alignment when we make a choice out of fear. So I always say to everyone that I'm working with, before you make a choice, decide why you are doing this and what place you are coming from.
Beautiful.
Because then it's going to roll out in a positive feeling, and it's going to sit way better within you.
Yes.
And that is so important. Kids who are under so much pressure right now to go to, like you say, to the Ivy League colleges.
Right.
And if it doesn't sit with them because they can't hold that, because they don't want that kind of pressure,
right.
There's nothing wrong with going to another college. And at the end of the day, it doesn't dictate your success in life.
Not at all. Not at all. My father...
No one's going to ask you. I used to say to my daughter at college, when her friends would get 90% and she would get 80%, I would go, Jade, when you are in a job, no one's going to ask you what you got for that test.
Right.
And she's highly successful in her own right.
Of course she is. It's so funny. My father got kicked out of school. He went into World War II. He was extremely successful. He became a military policeman. He was the personal chauffeur, if you will, for a gentleman that you probably have heard of. His name was MacArthur. And I'm being very, I'm being very playful right now. Yeah. So he literally, the funny thing was he was asked to leave school. He hated school. He was very bored. He didn't do well. They basically kicked him out. And he said, I don't want to be here. He said, I'm going to go into the military. And he became, as I said, became a military policeman. And when they tested him, they said, you're a really smart guy. And he said, oh, who knew? And so eventually they also realized he was a very, very moral man. Like he had a really good sense of what was right and wrong. He was very ethical. And so he did a lot of work with MacArthur. And MacArthur was so impressed with him, he asked him to also be the chauffeur for another well-known gentleman on the other side by the name of Hirohito. And so my father, when he was in his teens, maybe early 20s, was literally the MP that would drive around MacArthur or Hirohito. And my father was really brilliant in many ways, Kim. And one of the ways he really would shine is he caught on to languages faster than anyone I knew. And he spoke about 7 languages, Japanese being one of them. And so here's a very young man. He spoke to Hirohito in Japanese. And Hirohito was so impressed with him. He said, I don't understand you. And my father's name was Jerry or Jerome. And he said, why do you treat me so well? And he said, the war is over and it is time to move forward. And I have been asked, and this is a guy in his teens, early 20s.
It reminds me of Nelson Mandela, who obviously is a South African.
Right.
I was blessed to have known him. And there was one of his quotes that he said when he walked out of jail, and he was in prison for 27 years in this tiny little room. When you see it, you're just amazed.
Right.
And he walked out and he realized that if I don't forgive, I will always be in jail.
Yes, that's right.
And forgiveness for him was a big thing. And when we get back to success, he studied in jail. He studied to be a lawyer.
Right.
And it took him a long time because he didn't just pass his law exams. It was tenacious that he got through. And I lived my life with so much fear. I come from a trauma childhood. And so that overwhelming love was not really part of my life. And I needed to work it out because I was so stuck in fear and anxiety for most of my life. And I looked at these adults and go, you know what? They don't know what's going on. I better sort this out. And that's where all my skills and all my choices started to come from. So everything now that I teach, that I facilitate, that everyone that I work with, thousands of people internationally, it comes from 30 years of experience. I know what it feels like to be in fear. I know what it feels like to be anxious. I know what it feels like to want to belong. All of these lessons. And that's where wisdom comes from.
Right.
Wisdom does not come. And I'm not saying don't go to college. I mean, it's wonderful. And if you can, please do, study. Be a curious, long-time learner, But where wisdom comes from is not just out of a book or out of Google. Mm-hmm. Everyone can do that right now. Wisdom comes from experience. Yes. When you learn something, put it into learning, which is behavioral, and experience comes from living it. Take it and use it and live it and go, does this work for me? How does it work? What does it do? And so that whole thing of getting to know yourself and going within is just, for me, the absolute essential part of life. Get involved with life. When people say to me, give back, I've got such an issue with people who say, I'm giving back, because you're not giving back. What are you giving back? Who gave you to you in the first place, to give back? rather look at it and say, I'm getting involved.
I love that.
I'm getting involved. Because people want you involved. They want you involved in making the world a better place, or being a role model, or being a mentor. So it's about getting involved, because when you say you're giving back, it means that you're coming back from a superior perspective.
Okay.
And none of us are superior. We are all on the same platform, because we all in process. We all learning. None of us know. That's why I have a real issue when people say I'm an expert, because things are changing every day. We're changing. Outside is changing. So how do you become an expert? The minute you say I'm an expert, you close the door to learning more.
Yeah, I agree with you. I so agree with you. And it's fascinating. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Kim, is I'm meeting a lot of people these days who are finding it still very, very difficult to be. We're not so much in lockdown anymore, but a lot of people I'm finding, Kim, have difficulty even getting out of the notion of lockdown. So they may not be legally in lockdown, meaning the government may not have said, look, we're in lockdown. You can only go out in cases of emergency. You need to get food, you need medical attention, that kind of thing. But I'm meeting people that are very much still stuck in the mindset of being in lockdown. There's a lot of fear. There are a lot of people that I'm interacting with that seem very fearful and very stuck.
Definitely. In fact, I had a conversation last night with someone that I'm working with, and she said to me, she's a highly successful doctor. And she was saying to me, I don't really want to come out of this, because while I was in it, I could choose who I wanted to be with. There was no pressure. I could just say I'm not comfortable.
Right.
And so there's this whole new discovery of who we are. Were we happy doing that? Where do we want to go now? And so everyone's trying to rediscover themselves in this new reality. Because let's face it, the lockdown became a reality, became a norm for us.
Yes, it
so
did.
for me, it was kind of pleasant. I'm naturally introverted. I work and I'm a conditioned extrovert where I can stand up and talk to, thousands of people, but generally I'm very happy to be quiet at home and working. It's fine. Whereas my husband is a natural extrovert.
Right.
And he needs to get out and be with people. And he found it incredibly difficult. So yes, there's a lot of fear both ways. And again, it takes us back to how do we navigate this new world?
Right.
Who are we in this new world? And this new challenge of stepping up into our authenticity is really important, where we create our boundaries and find our voice in a much stronger way, where we say, that is not for me. I'm not doing that. I'm okay with not doing that. And actually voicing it out. Whereas generally we try and fit into society and what society tells us we should be doing. And that puts a huge amount of pressure on who we are.
Kim, what do you say to a person who is very much still emotionally in lockdown and they're we've had people who came out for the first time a week to 3 weeks ago. And I looked at them as patients and I said, are you telling me that you haven't left your house in over a year? And they said, that's what I'm telling you. I said, tell me more. They said, Nelson, I was terrified of getting COVID. I said, so did you have people to deliver everything that you needed? Yes. Everything was ordered off Amazon or from the local grocery store to be delivered. And I'd keep it outside in my garage for 3 days. And then I'd bring it all in and I'd wash it. And I said, so it's been a real act of courage for you to get out of your house, to get in your car and to drive to see me. Nelson, you're the only person I've seen in over a year. Kim, how do you work with someone who is still sort of spellbound with the terror that if they go out, it's likely that they may get ill, and in becoming ill, they may not make it through the illness? What do you say? How do you work with that kind of a person?
Well, first of all, just to acknowledge that social anxiety is a very real thing.
Yes.
It's a very real thing, especially if you're introverted. It's a big deal. And then you take baby steps. I don't believe in leaping off the mountain at times like this.
Right.
You take little steps, So some people are very happy wearing a mask right now because they can kind of hide behind it.
Yes.
So they're worried about what happens when we have to take our masks off.
Yes.
And everyone can see me. So everyone needs to be very gentle with themselves as well as everyone else, and don't say, that's ridiculous, you can do this, you're brave. Right. Because at that stage, they need to take those baby steps. So for your patient, him coming and seeing you for the first time was a massive step for him.
Right.
So he will have that win now in his bag, in his toolkit.
Yes.
And then slowly but surely, it's important to encourage them to take baby steps. Go for a walk outside where you feel safe. Yep. He's not going to go straight and eat inside in a restaurant.
Right.
It's about taking those little baby steps. And I'm doing it. Everyone needs to do what they feel comfortable with right now.
Kim, we're going to, forgive me, I'm so sorry. We're going to take another our 15-minute break. Folks, we'll be right back. I'm sorry to interview. You're so fascinating. I hate to interrupt you, but we'll take our on the half-hour break. We'll be right back, folks. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to another edition of Health Matters. We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
If this content resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel at uimedianetwork.org to stay updated with our uncensored shows. Also, like and follow us at UI Media Network on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and almost all your favorite podcasting platforms. Most importantly, if you're being censored on social media, write to us at contact@uimedianetwork.org to get your message out. And remember, keep raising that frequency.
All right. Hi, everybody. We're back. Dr. Nelson Bulmash here. Kim, let's jump back into this. Gosh, I wish you and I had a 2 to 4 hour show. I have so many questions for you. You and I are definitely going to do this again. There's no question about that.
Would love to.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I love what you just said, because I find as I get older, it's harder and harder in some ways, Kim, for me to jump off the mountain, right? Or to, I had friends that were into hang gliding. And I used to watch them, and I used to look at them and think, you're running off of a mountaintop into nothing. And that didn't really work for me. I mean, I don't know if it does for you, but the idea of running off of a precipice and dropping several hundred feet was just, I'm not saying I couldn't have done it, but I eventually, when my friends wanted to do it with me, I said, I think I'm going to bow out on this one. I'm not feeling the vibe of this, which translates to I'm not connecting with the need to jump off of a mountain and trust that the wings of this apparatus are going to hold me up and let me gently land 2,000 feet below. And so...
It's so interesting that you should bring that up, because I've had an experience with ziplining.
Okay.
So in Cape Town, quite a few years ago, my kids have jumped out of the plane, okay, which is like, they told me afterwards because they knew that I'd freak out before. But in South Africa, I did ziplining from mountain to mountain.
Wow.
It was a yoga retreat, and I was absolutely frozen with fear. They had to literally carry me to the next one. And once you start on one, you can't go back. You got to finish them.
Right.
And then recently we went to Costa Rica, and it was from tree to tree. And everyone was quite amazed because I got dressed, no problem, no anxiety, no drama. I went through it, no drama. And it didn't even excite me anyway afterwards. And it was quite an amazing experience to do something like that I was so in fear before.
Right.
And this time didn't trigger me at all. And I work a lot with triggers. So I give a whole talk.
Right.
On triggers. If anyone wants to hear that talk, it's fabulous. It's from triggers to triumph.
Love it.
And what triggers us, and when you understand the trigger and you neutralize the trigger, then you can do anything. And that takes you into a deeper understanding of really who you are, because most of our triggers come from our childhood, or definitely comes from our past. So what does that look like?
So fascinating to me. Did you consciously, I have to ask you this, did you consciously nullify or deactivate the trigger before you went to Costa Rica?
By doing it in Cape Town, I had experienced it.
Yes.
And then I went through an internal process of what was my trigger before? And how do I neutralize it now?
Mm-hmm.
And where was my fear?
Right.
And obviously a lot of fear comes from, I'm going to hurt myself, I'm going to die, I'm going to, whatever the case may be.
Yes.
And so when you neutralize those triggers, then I didn't feel anything. I was like, okay, I'm good. I don't have to ever do this again. Am I going to jump out of a plane? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. No, but I get it. No. That makes all the sense in the world. You've done it. You're complete with it. Well, by the way, another lesson from Forrest Gump. Running
exactly.
across the country.
Right. Exactly.
What's the meaning of life?
Right.
I'm just done.
We get triggered, as you're saying, even your client coming to you, your patient,
right,
and saying it must have taken him an enormous amount to come to you, which means that he was triggered. His emotions peaked, his behavioral changed, so it's about him looking and going, okay, what was my fear? Well, his fear is getting sick.
Yeah.
And then what? And we either suffer from our memories, causes our fear and anxiety from our past experience, or from our imaginations.
I'm laughing because our imaginations can be more destructive than the fears of our past.
We create amazing movies.
Yes, right.
Like sometimes I'll get into it and I go, oh, that is so dramatic. I like really, what are you telling yourself? That is quite a movie. And then I go, well, why not Romeo and Juliet? Let's change that. If you're going to do a movie, let's do a really nice, cool one, a romantic one, or a funny one. And then I giggle to myself and that movie's gone. Then I'm not in anxiety or panic anymore.
It's so funny. You're right, because you can create it to be whatever you want it to be. It can be a nightmare. It can be a nightmare. Yeah. And often we go down that path. Yeah. Like, oh my God, had I known my kids were going to jump out of planes, I would have had them dead 14 times before they actually got on the plane. It's so funny. So we can choose, and you can, I'm guessing you can condition yourself to choose that, yes, I like Romeo and Juliet. Of course, I'm going to go without Romeo and Juliet because they both die at the end too. But we'll pick another wonderful movie, Kim. Whatever wonderful movie is suitable for whatever.
And I laugh because I say to myself, when I go down that road, I go, Shakespeare, step back. We got this one.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
It's super funny. But my son as well, he lives in Sydney now, and he'll swim in the ocean, and I'm already thinking sharks. And he goes, I'm not even in the ocean, and you're already seeing the sharks.
Right. Yes. I get it. I get it, though. I mean, my son was with me this morning, and I said, so, son, are you going to be here when I get back? He said, Dad, I think I'm going to go backpacking. And I said, oh, you have some friends you're going to go backpacking with? He said, no, I think I'm going to go by myself. I said, son, you're going backpacking by yourself? I mean, I've been on backpacking trips where people break ankles. Matter of fact, I was packing with my wife on a simple trip and jumped off of a large tree that had been felled over a trail, and I didn't want to embarrass myself by going down on all fours. So I climbed up this massive tree and jumped off with a pack on and got spinal cord shock because I shouldn't have worn the pack. I hit the ground so hard, I couldn't walk. And my then girlfriend said, sweetheart, you're 250 plus pounds. I'm less than 100. I'm not packing you out of here. Figure it out. But so I had him eaten by bears or wolves or, a mountain lion or some wild, vicious attack. And he said, Dad, I'll be fine. He said, I've worked in Yellowstone where we have grizzly bears, wolves. And
that's so interesting, Nelson. When I was starting Tomorrow Trust, my last organization that I founded in South Africa in 2005, I knew that I wanted it to be integrative and holistic.
Right.
So I wanted the self-mastery, subconsciousness side, as well as the academia and everything. And I know Deepak Chopra well. And so I said to him, I need your help. I need to create this. And he goes, no, Kim, you know this stuff. So I toddled off to India because I didn't believe him. And I went to Swamiji there. And I said to him, I need help. I need to create this curriculum. And he said, the more you learn yourself, the more you'll be able to teach. And then he said to me, because we started talking about children and my children and the kids that we were going to be teaching and holding and all of that. And he said to me, Kim, the most dangerous thing in life is attachment. Mm. And in the West, parents are so attached to their children. And that is dangerous. And I went, what do you mean? This is like horrendous. You want me to detach? And he said, yes, detachment is the healthiest way to go. Because when you detach, you allow them their journey.
Yeah, I get it.
And it takes that pressure off. And I've really worked very hard to do that with my children. As a mum, I was a single mum for 14 years. So I'm very close to them. And it was incredibly difficult for me to detach and allow them that without wanting to fix it and hold it and take care of everything, and it's very important. It's very important for them to know that they can do this themselves.
You're so right. And it's funny because I think one of the things right now, Kim, that people are really struggling with during the pandemic is we're at home, often alone, and we're dealing with expectations that no longer meet our needs. We can't reconcile what's really going on with the expectations that we have that we really want. Everybody, wants things to go back to at least where they were. And life right now is not going to go back to where it was. So you have this incongruency between reality and the expectations that we hold for the quality of our lives, whether it be economically, whether it be socially. And I think that creates a chasm that's very hard for a lot of people to span.
Mm-hmm. Viktor Frankl, I don't know if you know Viktor Frankl?
Yeah, sure.
So Viktor Frankl has said that despair comes with living life without meaning.
Yes.
And so it's very important now for everyone to find meaning in what's going on with their lives. And I've always taught that there's a gift in no matter what you're going through. So for me, I had a lot of loss growing up. My stepfather, who was very close to, died when I was 10. My real father died when I was 14. I mean, there was just one thing after another. And when I look at it, the gift for me was I learned to be independent. I learned to live in an imaginary world.
Right.
So I was always told, oh, you're the dreamer, and you're never going to amount to anything because you're the dreamer. And yet when I had my children, the first thing that I taught them was to dream.
Beautiful.
Because everything starts with a dream. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't say, I have a goal. He said, I have a dream. Yes. Everything starts with a dream. And so what people are seeing now, it's about really becoming resilient. And resiliency is reimagining what your life and what your world can be and what you can create.
Right.
So it's reassessing and reimagining. And in between those two comes a healing process.
Right.
And it's very important for people to go, how do I heal from this? What do I need? Do I need to see a psychologist? Do I need a massage? Do I need a walk? Right. It's all this self-care stuff that people are generally not very good at or don't understand what they could be doing in the first place.
Yeah, so very true.
So at this stage, we're all reimagining what our lives could be, want to be, what change do we want exactly.
Yeah.
I don't like shoulds or have tos.
But and Kim, I completely agree with you. But I hear so many people say my life should be this, Nelson, and I didn't use it because I'm with you. That's a word I don't use a lot. I don't should on people. You should have done this. You should do this, because it's their own unique expression. As my life is my own unique expression. And yet I hear that so often. Now, so my life should be this. I should be able to do this. I should be able to da-da-da-da. And I'm hearing so much of that right now. And so you've got the process of reconciling the reality of, sorry, but, we're wearing masks right now and it'll pass. But that's what's so. And, it's just so interesting that I have some people that now so I'm going to wear a mask. It makes me safer, makes you safer. Whether you agree or disagree, and that's fine. But then I have other people that their civil liberties are being destroyed. How dare the government even think it's suitable to do that? And it's so fascinating that you can talk to people. And some people are like, I'm not afraid of getting COVID. The reality is that not a lot of people in my group die. I'm very healthy, take very, very good care of myself. It's unlikely that it would happen. I'm not going to go down that fear path. I get that. And then you have other people that are like, I agree with that, and I don't want to be told what to do, irrespective of that it could be beneficial for us all to agree that there might be a number of things that we could do to support each other in having greater outcomes for everyone.
I think 2 points, you've made 2 really important points. I think we get unhappy, and all of us do the same thing. Me, everyone that I know, and everyone that I work with. We become unhappy when our life doesn't look the way we expect it to look.
Yes, yes.
And then we need to turn within and go, where did that come from? Was that a conditioning from our parents? Was it a conditioning from society? Where does that should look like come from? Because generally, I didn't want a career really, and then man plans and God laughs, and God was like, okay, that was your plan, not my plan. We'll go with my plan,
Right.
Okay, right. So there's that of expectations. And then the other side is this whole business with masks or not masks and politics and everything that's gone on. And for me, it's about respect and being sensitive to everyone and coming to an agreement with, okay, I don't agree with wearing a mask, but if it's going to make you feel more comfortable, then that's okay. I'll do it. It's not a big deal.
Exactly.
It's like walking into a church or a library. You may want to scream on the top of your lungs, but really it's more sensitive just to be quiet.
Yes. Kim, we're going to pick up on this as soon as we get back after our next commercial break. Thank you. Folks, we'll be right back. I am Dr. Nelson Bulmash, and you're listening to another edition of my show, Health Matters.
Safety Air Purification Systems, an air purifier with robust technologies that can filter, sterilize, and re-energize large quantities of air at a whisper quiet volume. It features a proprietary HEPA RX and pre-filter that act as a capturing layer, going for big particles and ultrafine particles. Its next layer is an activated carbon filter that absorbs and captures volatile organic compounds and noxious odors. From viruses to bacteria, its kill chamber packs a 3-punch layer to destroy over 99% of anything that remains in the air. And while most air purifiers stop at the capture or kill stage, Safety Air Purifier takes it one step further, re-energizing clean, pure, sterilized air by creating negative ions within the revitalizing chamber. The Safety Air Purifier also monitors air quality in real time, utilizing smart sensor technology that helps you breathe better air, increase productivity, and improve morale. But don't just take our word for it. Ask the thousands of workplaces we've helped, Fortune 500 companies, dental offices, senior facilities, K-12 schools and universities, and professional sports teams. The Safety Air Purifier's robust technology combined to protect you against indoor air pollutants and viruses to make the most powerful yet quietest air purifier. Safety Air Purification.
Everyone, Dr. Nelson Bulmash here. We're here for the last segment of my show. Kim, you're so fascinating. What we probably should have done is order dinner in and continue the show over coffee. I'd be really good with that. I just have so many. You're so interesting to me. So,
just to jump in, because I don't want to lose this train of thought.
Please.
But I was sitting in the break and thinking about expectations and broken expectations and masks and all of that kind of thing. And what's coming to me a lot is perhaps this is a time, what I'm also hearing a lot of people saying, I'm hitting a wall. And, sometimes the wall is there to stop you just to have a break,
yes, Right.
And at the same time, perhaps this is a time to consider really thinking, who do you want to be?
I like that.
Who do you want to be? Because, we always ask ourselves the questions, what do you want to be? I want to be a doctor. I want to be this. I want to do that. It's all the doing stuff. But how often do we stop and go, who do we want to be? I want to be whatever we choose. And it's that internal reckoning now.
Right. And this is really such a great time. It was very difficult for me, Kim. People laugh at me when I say this, and that's fine. I actually am an introvert. I can effectively engage people in an extroverted manner like I am right now. But being in more isolation didn't really bother me during this time. What really bothered me was not being able to go to the gym. That was really, really hard for me because that's a way that I center myself. I ground myself. I prepare myself for the day. And when that was taken away from me, that was really hard. I could pick up my phone and call my friends anytime. I could Skype them, FaceTime them, Zoom with them. That didn't really bother me too much. But not being able to engage in the grounding, healing, and the time that my daughter is a world champion lifter. And she said the gym is my temple. That's where I come to peace with myself, my life, and the world. And I thought, that's so true of me, honey. That was, growing up was my temple as well. That's where I found myself. That's where I asked the most important questions, because it was a time, Kim, that I could actually quiet my mind enough. I would push so hard that there was no more of that extra energy to engage in ruminating behavior, ruminating thoughts. So I could just quiet myself and actually hear the more profound engagement of my mind about, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? How do you want to live your life? And I think I read an article a few days ago that indicated that about 70% of the people would gladly change their career path or their job choice, but there's too much fear, too much doubt that stops them from engaging in whatever actions would be necessary to find them a better job.
Yeah.
And so,
but Nelson, exactly what you're saying. If you watch children playing a game,
right,
they're completely immersed in the game. You have to shout at them to get their attention.
Yes.
And that's when I say get involved with life. That's what I mean. And when you go to the gym, you're completely involved with life. It's a form of meditation.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And then it's also an opportunity to become resourceful and resilient. My daughter was in lockdown. She lives in Singapore, and they were in serious lockdown. And the only way, she's super fit, yoga, and she was doing in a tiny, tiny apartment. She was doing yoga and other things, but she needed to get out. She needed to see other people. She was locked in there for like 3 months. And so what did she do? She bought a bicycle, because a bicycle allowed her to cycle around Singapore without a mask, and she could see people.
Oh, I love that.
So this is what showed me, though, which was so profound for me watching her do it, was she's resourceful.
Yes.
And I think that that's one of the attributes in life that is so important, to teach our children to be resourceful. Because, let's face it, life isn't going to be just how you want it to be. It's just, that's not the human journey.
No, it isn't.
And so it's about understanding that you can be resilient, you can be resourceful, you can go within,
right, you
can do tough. And these are the skills. That's why I teach this. That's why we teach this in our programs. When I work with women, when I speak for companies, for groups, this is what I speak on. This is what we teach, is because these are the important attributes. If you don't have a job now, you'll be able to find another job. What's important is how you wake up in the morning. How do you go to sleep? How do you navigate your life? How do you want your life to be by the time you close your eyes right at the end? Because the one thing that's certain is that we're all going to die.
Right.
So it's about, how do you want to live every single day?
It's beautiful. You brought up a notion to me that I want to discuss with you, and that is, it sounds to me, particularly like during this time, we need to rethink or redefine what we think personal success is.
Oh.
And I say that because before COVID, most of the people that I knew, and I'm not, there's no judgment when I say this, because I'm guilty as charged as well, is that success was, how successful was I in my career? How much money did I make? Which schools maybe did my kids go to, that kind of thing. And one of the things that I actually loved, and when I say this, of course, irrespective of people dying, I didn't love that part of this, but that was engaging to me, was I actually, for the first time in decades, had the time, Kim, to sit back and think about, was I satisfied with the quality of my life? Was I doing the things that were engaging me in a way that was appropriate for me to fulfill on the ambitions of my life? Was I being a good husband? Was I being a good father? Was I being a good friend? Was I being a good doctor? And where was I headed? I'm just shy of 60 now. Where do I want to end up in maybe the last third of my life? And from this introspective period, I realized that it's time for me to teach. This was a really big decision that I've been toying with for over 20 years. And I got very clear, having all this time, that it was time for me, certainly to continue my personal practice as a chiropractor, naturopath, and nutritionist, but it was time for me to teach the unique perspective that I call torque reset that I have put together over a 30-year period. And it became very, very clear to me that that's next on my journey through life, personally and professionally. And I hope that in people listening to our discussion, your interview, that they get the importance of taking advantage of the solitary time and using it for reevaluation, maybe repurposing, right?
And you know, what's very important, like you say, am I being a good dad? Am I being a good doctor, whatever? And what does good mean? Because good is all perspective.
Yes.
And then again, it's what is good to you may not be good for me or anyone else.
Right.
And so it's the ownership of, who am I in this space? Who do I want to be in this space?
Yes.
As well as all of what you said are identities. I am a dad. I am a doctor.
Right.
And it's often when we get hooked into that identity, that's when things become so challenging. When you let go of those identities, then you open up to massive potentiality.
Yes.
Like to go teach or whatever. And that's where fear comes in, because people are so hooked. They so strongly hold on to an identity.
Right.
And what happens when the identity goes away? I remember leaving, one or two of my organizations that I'd started, and I was always worried about founder syndrome, because founder syndrome can cripple an organization. So you want to bring in new blood and you want new ideas and everything.
Right.
And I was petrified the first one that I did, because my identity was so strong. Everyone knew it. I was in the papers. I was in magazines. I was interviewed all the time, hooked onto that. I was the face. And what happens when I'm not that anymore?
Right.
And that took me down a whole other path where I'm okay, because at the end of the day, this is who I am.
Yes.
And Nelson Mandela comes back to me, where everyone wears suits and they politicians, and they dress beautifully, and look at all the politicians. Nelson Mandela never wore a suit. He was uncomfortable when he came out of jail. He made the African shirt look beautiful because that's what he was comfortable in.
Right.
So no one expected him to wear a suit anymore, because that's who he was. And I just want to share a beautiful story that I'm sure your listeners would appreciate. So I was running Shoah Foundation, which is Spielberg's organization, and he was doing a whole gala in LA, and they called me and they go, we need a message from Nelson Mandela to show at the gala for Spielberg. And I said, well, you don't just go to his door and knock and go, hi, I'm here to do this, even though I knew him. And so I get a call, I contact, and I get a call and go, Madiba, we call him Madiba, is waiting for you at home. And I go, well, my videographer's in another city. They go, we don't know, but just go there, he's waiting. So I was picking my daughter up, who was 12 at the time, and we laugh at this now. But I pick her up and I go, JD, I don't have time. I can't take you home. You're going to have to come with me to Madiba's house. He's waiting for us. And she looks at me in all innocence and she says, I want you to know I'm only doing this for you. She's just about to go and be with Mandela. And so we rush off, and I get there, and it was very unusual. There was no one around him. No, Zelda, his PA, wasn't there, the guards, no one. And I said, Madiba, I'm so sorry. I don't have my videographer with me. I'm so sorry. He says, Kim, don't worry. Come in for tea. And he was known as the children's president. So we go in for tea, and I order rooibos. I'm South African. And for 19 minutes, he sat and spoke to my 12-year-old daughter. And then he said to me, Kim, come back tomorrow. And I went back and I did the video, and it was incredibly special taking it back to the gala. And I was actually standing behind Spielberg when it was shown. And I realized then that he is the most authentic human I know. Because, yes, he was really the children's president.
Right.
It didn't matter what he was wearing.
Yes.
It didn't matter that I was in the room. His sole focus was on a 12-year-old child. And so it brings me back to how important it is to know who you are and be that without fear.
Beautiful.
Be that in the best way that you know how. And this is a time, like you said, where you went introspective and you thought, who am I in this space? Who do I want to be, and what do I want to be doing?
Right.
And sometimes that takes a lot of bravery.
It does.
And a lot of
Yes.
courage. And that's where people shrink back because they're so afraid what other people will think. It's all the judgment stuff. And if I can just encourage everyone, be brave. Live your life the way you want it to be, because you only have the one and no one's going to make it happen for you.
Beautiful. Kim, thank you so much. I've got to wind down the show. I hope you can hold on for just a minute. And I'll talk to you personally. Thank you. Beautiful
Thanks,
show.
Nelson, for having
Kim,
me on.
my pleasure. Truly, truly my pleasure. I look forward to growing with you and engaging you in more future events. Thank you so much, folks. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I have another amazing guest. Her name is Laura Temin, and she does magical work. If you are suffering from PTSD or any form of trauma, she does hypnosis, has done it with me, and it has been spectacular. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Remember, always be your best.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash, where we help you discover how to ignite your mind, body, and spirit connection. Join us next time when we will bring you more exciting guests and engaging topics. Meanwhile, feed your mind, exercise your body, and nurture your spirit. The United Intentions Foundation and its associates take no responsibility for the opinions and statements made by the talk show hosts or their